welcome to Show Studio. It's our second panel of Milan Fashion Week and we've actually got a good show to talk about, which is great because we're going to be discussing Prada. I've also got a brilliant, large panel with me this evening, but I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, starting with you, Sasha.
I'm Sasha Wilkins. I've been a fashion editor for over 10 years and my most recent incarnation is as the founder and editor of libertylondongirl.com, which is a blog, video production company, all sorts of digital things.
I'm William Oliver. I'm a writer and the editor of District MTV.
I'm Avigail. I'm a stylist and designer at Silver Spoon Attire.
I'm Anna Laub. I'm the creative director of Prism and an ex-editor, fashion editor.
I'm Maarten van der Horst. I'm a designer.
So, have we been enjoying the Italian shows so far? What have been the highlights of the day we've had? Is anyone excited by what's going on in Milan? Sasha, what have you seen?
Nothing yet, I hate to say. Been too busy writing.
That's fair enough.
I'm up to date on London, if that counts.
Well, is that because London's just much more exciting? Anna, do you get excited by Italy at all?
I mean, I think Prada's like the show that everyone gets excited about. I was like flicking through Instagram to see what everyone else was excited about, and I had a quick look at, I saw a lot of Max Mara, which is kind of interesting. Loads of block colours. It looked like people were kind of unexpectedly excited about that show. So you don't normally see a lot of people posting pictures from Max Mara. So that was kind of interesting.
That's because they're there because they're a big advertiser and they have to put their bums
sure,
on those seats.
But I think, you know,
it's
you're
nice
not
when you
seeing,
get excited.
yeah, but you don't see, I don't know, there are a lot of
There's more
advertisers that you
buzz than
don't
usual.
see people putting up pictures from. And I didn't see any other, I don't know, when I saw the pictures I thought it looked like a nice show and they were doing something different to what they do normally. And I mean, I suppose that pared down thing that people are doing at the moment, they can do that in quite a nice way. They're using, you know, luxury fabrics and interesting lines, and they can do that. It goes with their brand, so, you know.
I think they're on a bit of a mission. They've just changed PR companies in London after
interesting.
being with someone for ages. I think that moves are afoot at Max Mara.
I love the bonnets that they've been doing, that they did this season.
This is an unexpected hit. I didn't expect people to talk about Max Mara.
I was thinking about Max Mara this morning as well.
A few people, what we've kind of been buzzing about on our previous panel was we did a Gucci panel and we were talking a lot about the return of sex to the runways, and I wanted to ask you guys if you'd noticed that maybe even over London, things getting a lot more fleshy and a bit sexier. Did any of you guys pick up on that? Maarten, you're kind of smiling at me from across the room.
No, it's just because you were talking about Gucci.
Okay. I think you said it's just because you were talking about sex, and I was like, okay.
No, but I thought maybe maybe it's relevant for the. I don't know. I didn't specifically notice extra.
I don't know, Fashionista was quite sexy.
Tom Ford was sex, basically.
But isn't that always what they
Yeah.
are?
Tom Ford and Gucci are sexy.
Yeah, but they're always, it doesn't mean that it's what, I don't know, I noticed that people were more feminine, like there was like a kind of hard feminine thing going on.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, slightly different to sexy. I mean, it can be sexy at the same time, but it's not about being sexy. And it's like an allowance to be more feminine, which I think in the last few seasons there hasn't been so much of that.
Thank God bodycons kind of disappeared. Someone like Maria Schwab and even David Comer seem to have calmed their silhouettes down and they're skimming the body rather than sucking it in like they used to.
But then we're seeing different kinds of sex, like you mentioned Fashionista, but also I thought like, you know, Sibling was quite playfully sexy, you know, with the little bra tops and the 50s thing.
It was super feminine.
And there's a lot of sense of humour, I think, now as well. I think people are trying to be, you know, it's a bit more relaxed. Like people are trying to be more relaxed about fashion as well, which is nice. It's like a laid back. There's a laid back sense of humour, which is comfortable.
Of course, fewer heels. I reckon 56% of the shows have people in flats. The pool slide thing, which Christopher Kane started. Everyone's going to be wearing pool slides next summer.
I guess I asked about the sexy thing because I think that's what we look to Italy kind of expecting. Perhaps we expect that kind of, you know, real glamazon thing, that thing that we saw at Gucci, and it's not perhaps particularly exciting. And I ask, given it's the Prada discussion, and there's this amazing quote that people always dig out about Mrs. Prada, where she was sort of insulting other Italian people's style, and she called it awful. And she says, I call the look the desperation of the sexy, which I found really interesting because what she does, I think, is incredibly attractive. And she puts across things that women want to wear, but it isn't sexy, it's slightly subversive. I was wondering sort of how you'd characterise her. Is that what stands her apart from the other Italian designers? You know, she's not trying to make women look hot?
think she does it in an intelligent way.
Yeah.
She's not trying to overtly make women sexual, and she's a woman. I think it's also I think there is something different about being a woman designing for women. She's coming at it from, not that all women design like that, but she definitely comes at it from an intellectual point of view, which I think, you know, can really differentiate. Not that there aren't other designers doing that, but I think, you know, she really, it's a really intelligent way to do fashion, and she's really looking at it from that kind of angle.
Well, her references are so wide-ranging. You know, that's the thing, and she's talking to a woman who knows her. You know, there's a relationship.
She's quite empowering with it as well. It's quite like an effortless, powerful.
Do you think it helps that she didn't study fashion if she has a doctorate in political science? Do you think that, I don't know, Maarten, how do you feel about that? Because you were obviously trained in fashion. Do you ever...
I know, the thing is, she's been doing it now for so long. So I don't know, I don't really think it's, I think you learn so much more doing it, obviously. But I don't know, I think she's one of the few people, or also one of the few labels that actually suggest like a wardrobe for a modern woman. You know, together with, I personally think, together with Acne, they're the only labels that I think are quite relevant. And I think when Prada does it right, it is. Because last season, you know, there were no trousers for winter collection. So, you know, then I'm a bit like, well, what are you doing? Because I don't think everyone should always look, you know, déshabillé or disheveled. It's, you know, it's not very realistic. And I think when she gets it right, it's such an interesting twisted take on reality-based dressing, you know, like what you wear when you have to work or what you wear when you go out.
But that's the thing about her as well, because that's the thing about Prada, because they have kind of, you know, they're such an established label now that they do kind of cover everything, but they do it in such a unique way. You know, they've got their own aesthetic.
Going back to that sexy thing, she understands that great phrase that the most sexual organ in the body is the brain. That you don't dress to show what you've got.
Well, it's interesting that you say, because she's given this great quote before where she's talked about loving ugliness. She said it to the Telegraph, I think it was actually this year. She said, ugly is attractive, ugly is exciting, because it's newer. And I think there is an intelligence in how sort of provocative she is with that. And it got me thinking a lot about what we deem new and exciting and the designers that we presume move fashion forward. And it does seem to me they're the ones that do put something out there which could be defined as sort of ugly at first glance. You know, you look at what Christopher Kane does and people often say, oh, it's so wrong, it's right. And I think it's because people haven't seen it before and they're kind of surprised by it. I don't know, what do you guys think about ugliness? You're nodding, Maarten.
I think that's super interesting, and I think that's, for me, that's the most interesting about Prada, is that you don't know that you like that, you know? Like if Prada does a Hawaiian shirt, you're like, oh God, I actually want to wear a Hawaiian shirt now, because she's done it in such a clever way with such an amazing use of fabrics that, you know, she turns the whole bad tasting, and the coats, she, you know, like whatever is considered sexual, she turns it upside down, and all of a sudden you're asking yourself questions. And most of all, the question would be like, oh, should I wear a Hawaiian shirt?
I feel like she knows what we like 6 months before we do.
Yeah.
It's like you see it and then 6 months later it's like, oh shit, yeah, I really like that.
She tells us what.
Yeah, she tells us.
Yeah.
What, you know, we've talked about this with the Marc Jacobs panel. We said like he's kind of New York Fashion Week, and I feel like Mrs. Prada is Milan Fashion Week. What makes design, is it just because she moves fashion forward? What stands a designer when they get to that point where it doesn't really feel real until they've shown? And do we have that in London, or is maybe that's what makes London so exciting, is there's no one that's just the one reason you go there?
No, there's a few people in London, I think. Yeah.
Who would you pull out in?
Richard Nicol, Jonathan Saunders, you know, who Lulu kind of focuses on at Fashion East. I think those are the people that really like stand out, you know. They're obviously Simone Rocha. There's lots of people I think that are very important to London.
I think it's back to the advertising thing as well, that we don't really have big advertiser brands. Okay, Christopher Kane might become one because of the backing from Kering, but I think it gives people much more space to be creative. You look at Milan, and certainly when I was in the Wall Street Journal, all Milan meant to me was endless showroom appointments for minor advertisers. I don't ever really think of London in that same way.
But at the same time, I think Milan is getting more interesting because Stefano Pilati is now working there.
For sure.
Yeah,
which
I saw.
I think is
what's the
incredibly
brand?
interesting.
He's doing something for.
Well, for Zegna he did the menswear, which was one of the standout menswear shows, I think. A lot of people disagree with that, but and also the womenswear collection that he just showed.
Yeah, everyone was talking about
was really interesting,
Yeah.
and also
That's
because I think Milan has a unique take on luxury, which I think is the most interesting part of Milan.
Tell me about that. Talk to me about that.
Well, it's the only city when they get really decadent about the use of fur, the use of, like leather, and I think they stand out in that compared to the other cities. And I think especially someone like Stefano, who has such a amazing way of making aspirational clothing, what he used to do at YSL as well. I think it's incredibly interesting to mix that with the houses in Italy. So I do think there's future. I don't think Milan's dead, and I don't really think Prada is the only label there, but for now maybe.
You mentioned that Milan's sort of seeming more exciting, and it feels like we're looking to it a bit more, and it leads to a question I wanted to ask about how we're seeing this slight focus on Milan, kind of tentatively about trying to bring up some new talent, Armani sort of lending his show space to younger designers. What do you guys think about that, William?
Well, I mean, I was going to kind of slightly disagree, I suppose, about Italy becoming more exciting, but I think
why are you going to disagree? Tell us first.
I just don't necessarily know if that's true. I mean, I think there are some, designers who are obviously doing interesting things, Prada being one of them. But I was also going to say that I think that the fact that Italy is kind of going through a tough period economically lends itself to a bit of passion and a bit of kind of striving for something new.
Do we think that we actually see that? I think people, maybe it's the fashion press just getting a bit bored, but often I feel like we tie big sort of changes, like financial, economic situations to what's going on in fashion quite easily. People often said when we had all those suits, everyone was like, oh, everyone's playing it safe because of the recession. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. But I wonder if we see links as... you must know about this, Sasha, because you worked in the Wall Street Journal. Do you find, or do you think that people sort of make those links between?
Well, I was trying to think about it because we launched WSJ in 2008, which is obviously not an ideal time to launch 1.5 million circulation luxury magazine. We brought 62 new advertisers to that franchise. And we didn't at any point feel like there was a lessening in what people were spending. And certainly when we were doing appointments, I didn't feel that the clothes were any less luxurious. At the price point we're looking at, people who buy these clothes, if you have $100 million and you lose 80% of your income, you're still a millionaire.
Yeah.
And that's the thing you always have to remember, I think, if you can afford these clothes in the first place. It's actually not going to make that much difference to your spending power.
Well, we talked about this actually on one of our earlier London panels, but I'd be really keen to get all of your take. It's about brands that are actually upping their prices to make things seem more luxurious. So Emma's have talked about doing
Mulberry,
that.
the obvious one.
Burberry as well. I don't know, what do you think about that? At Prism, do you think about kind of, you have sort of a business acumen in that sense, what do you think of that?
I mean, I think it's kind of shocking that they're upping their prices. I mean, I'm permanently trying to keep my prices down. Everything we make is made in Italy or Spain, and to use those kind of skilled craftsmanship and those those leathers or those fabrics that are made especially in France or Italy, it costs a lot of money basically. So we're always trying to keep them within a price point that we think is fair, essentially. So we'll cut our margins in order to do that. Whereas I know that there are, the bigger brands they're trying to cut the margins at production so that they can maintain really high high prices in the stores and up their own margins, as in make more money on the product. I don't think that's... I don't know.
Well, it goes to what Maarten says about luxury. I find it really interesting what we perceive as luxurious, because sometimes it feels like something just being high in price just makes us seem...
Well, I think that the whole term of luxury has slightly changed. I mean, I think, before you paid more money for something because you trusted that brand to give you a product that's going to last, that's going to be an investment, and you hope that's still true. But there's a lot of brands now that have a price attached to them just because of the name and maybe not because of the workmanship, which is disappointing, I think.
I'd put Mulberry in that category. They've whacked their prices up, and I understand it's because of the prestige associated with those price points in Asia, which is their growing market, but they're actually not really so fussed about their volumes in the UK.
I mean, not
and
to
Europe.
Defend them, because I don't actually know anything about Mulberry, but I think that they're actually trying to do more production in the UK, which might be why their prices are going.
Also, applying a higher price point to
sure.
something kind of gives it a sense of elitism as well, which I think
Sure.
within fashion is important. Do you know what I mean? Like, you want to aspire to something, you want to feel like you've bought something which makes you feel special, and in this, you know, society we live in today, spending a lot of money on that is the answer. Do you not think it's just got
out of control that things are now being priced according to what they think the market will bear,
yeah,
rather than the actual worth of the item?
I think it's crazy that you can buy a pair of shoes for £1,000 now.
But you can't.
It used to be £300 was a lot of money for a pair of shoes, and now
I think we've lost perspective. I really, really do.
I'm really interested, actually, William, because you work, you know, District MTV. It's like it's young people. It's a young audience.
Yeah.
So we're kind of that generation. You know, you're writing for a generation that's going to come up and spend that money on luxury. Do they care about craftsmanship and production, the things that we've been talking about, or is it just about a label?
It's just about a label. I mean, well, no, that's a horrible thing to say.
I
don't think they're that bothered about craftsmanship. I think what they're bothered about is statement.
Yeah, I think we're now talking about Prada. I think we're talking about Prada. If you pay £500 for a Hawaiian shirt, then you know you're paying for the name. But if you're paying like alligator leather printed in the most incredible way, which they can only do in Italy, because that's what I think is very unique there. It's also obviously technology and development.
But then the market is so saturated with completely accessible price points as well.
Yeah,
there has to be some separation. I mean, like as soon as Prada puts something on the runway, or any iconic label puts something on the runway that has that statement appeal to it, you know, many other brands, high street shops will churn that out.
But that's what's supposed to be the difference. So the high-end brands are supposed to be saying this product is really well made. This is like beautiful material, beautiful leather, or you know, the workmanship that's gone into this costs this much more, and you can trust this product. You can buy it and invest in it, and you know it will. I mean, certainly with my brand, that's how I think of it, and that's what we're doing with it. And you'd assume that, you know, something like Hermes, their whole, you know, the line for their whole brand is that it's, you know, it's all crafted, and they're using special leathers, and they're doing things that other people can't do. So you would hope that they're not just kind of putting prices up in order to differentiate from high street.
But isn't an argument against, like, if you look at the statement sweater, which has been like the item of the year, everyone's talked about it.
Well, that's something
that's a sweater, and people are buying it, and they're spending 300, 400 quid on it, and it is literally exactly the same as a high street sweater. Like,
I mean, if you look at it, so obviously Givenchy being the kind of icon of
or
that.
even like Kenzo.
But Kenzo, actually their price points are relatively accessible.
It's 300 quid. People are spending 300 quid when they
Okay,
can
but a Givenchy t-shirt is 400, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think Kenzo is expensive though.
Yeah,
I think it's expensive to spend that much
But the thing
money
is,
on a
I think
jumper.
maybe Prada is expensive because otherwise the people wouldn't buy it. Like the people that they make, you know, the nylon jackets for, or the driver shoe, like, you know, they want to pay a lot of money.
Does anyone remember that?
It's also not meant for us.
There was a brilliant...
I don't think Prada is meant for me, you know. I think they aim at a certain market.
Yeah.
I think it was
with
new.
their
It's meant for you. Isn't it expensive
No.
as well though? Because you get like a lifelong guarantee. Once you buy, I mean, I've got Prada shoes that I bought 4 years ago, and if there's something wrong with them, I know that 4 years later I can go into the store and they'll fix them for me. And I think that's what you're paying for. It's really important.
An argument that no one's really buying Prada clothes. They're buying the handbags and sunglasses and the shoes.
I mean, and you can't buy the clothes because they don't have it in the shop.
Well, I was going to say, all the stuff we're about to see, they don't produce.
No.
So
I think it was New York Magazine that ran a piece by someone who used to manage a Prada store in New York about 4 or 5 years ago. It's when I was living in Manhattan. And it was fascinating because she basically pointed out in the piece that they just never sold any clothes. It was literally only selling the leather goods that you'd get. She wasn't very polite. I think her phrase was lesbian art gallery owners buying Prada, and that's a very, very small part of the Venn diagram of
But
buyers.
is that what makes Prada exciting then? Because it gives Mrs. Prada the freedom to put something out there that is a creative statement, because as long as she makes a decent bag, she can do something exciting with her clothes, because perhaps she's not particularly worried about sell-through.
But I think do you think most of these brands are making money from selling a black bag? They're not making money from, even Givenchy. People, you might see those sweaters, that's probably, you know, one of the items they've sold the most of ever, because it's so accessible. I don't think any of these huge houses are making most of their money from the clothes. The clothes are kind of what sets the tone of everything and tell the story, and then, you know, the customer enjoys the story and believes in that idea, and then, you know, they buy the bag.
But I do think that's about to change, because now you have labels like Kenzo and like Acne that have a different price level, and what you see on the runway you literally see in the shop later.
Yeah, for sure.
So I do think it's a bit outdated. Same with Alexander Wang, same with Marc Jacobs. Like, you know, you can buy the items in the shop.
But it's I think that's a
Prada
different
is
market, Alex Wang and Acne, and it's like
different.
they're not
absolutely.
competing with
But do you not think that's a
Givenchy and
younger
Prada
market?
and
So maybe what you're saying, Maarten, is
More
they'll grow
modern,
into expecting to be able to
maybe.
buy.
Yeah, but
Not
I just don't
accessories.
understand why Prada can't just deliver the same quality as they promise on the
Maybe
runway
they
as
don't
in the
want
shop.
to, maybe they are actually trying to make that separation, or maybe she is trying to make that separation. Because with Givenchy, for example,
But the question is why?
why do they want
it's
to make
hard,
that separation?
probably
Yeah.
hard to
Hard to
produce
produce,
all of those
yeah.
things, and they probably know that
And also
maybe
to-
they won't get sell-throughs and they won't be able to produce it for the prices they need to, and so they just
And to keep that elitism as well. Like with Givenchy, for example, the kind of business model behind that is that they hit every target market. They hit a streetwear market, they hit a mid-range market, they hit somebody that can buy a bag, and then tailoring, well, for menswear, for example, which is ultimately, I guess, one of their biggest sellers. Like, they are kind of covering every option.
And the licenses for the makeup.
Well, exactly,
And
yeah.
sunglasses and all
It just
the rest
sounds
of it.
horribly outdated, like couture.
I think Prada do.
It's like the same. It's the same weird.
What's your ideal thing then? What would you like, if you could go and speak to Mrs. Prada and be like, this is what you should do, what would you
Yeah,
say?
just develop amazing garments.
But shows are kind of outdated anyway. I mean, I think the idea of doing a show and
No, but
spending
the
that
thing
much
is,
money
like,
on...
okay, so I work with acne, but I keep bringing it up because
Yeah, I was going to
think-
say, but then I was like,
Disclosure.
I want
What's
to
going on with
just admit
acne?
it.
no, because you can do an amazing show, be very directional, and sell, like wearable, affordable clothes.
But not
with
everyone
good
wants
quality.
to do that. That's the thing.
But just-
That's the difference.
But when we say
When
they
you
don't
put
want
up-
to, do they need to? Do they need to catch up? Is that the future that Maarten's talking about?
Isn't that the whole Scandinavian thing? When I went to Stockholm Fashion Week, I summed it up by saying, these are just clothes that walk straight off the runway into your closet. And it wasn't a compliment. It was, this is a waste of my time because these clothes do not need to be seen on a runway. I can get what the designer's talking about by seeing hanging in the Acne store
Where's
or
the
in the
proposition?
Dayberger store. There's nothing here that changes the way I think about
Well, this
fashion.
gets us into the clothes versus fashion debate, which I love having on these panels. It always gets really aggro. But is that what you go to Fashion Week to see then? Do you go to be moved, to
I
be
do not
surprised?
want, I'm never going to go to Stockholm Fashion Week again. It was a waste of my
I
time.
really want to go to Stockholm Fashion Week. I think it'd be amazing.
Who's talking about Stockholm Fashion Week? It's not the same though, is it?
I do know what you're saying. The kind of that difference between high fashion and that word accessible fashion. Like wearability and accessibility. I was having that conversation the other day about how you rarely see those words in a show report because it's almost like saying that is the worst thing you can say to a designer.
The laziest reviewing word out there is wearable, isn't it? It makes me want to stick pins in people who use the word wearable. All clothes are wearable by their very nature,
Yeah.
you would hope.
Yeah, but maybe that's why London is so great, because the stuff that you see here is what you get in the shop. If you love the Simone Rocha collection, you can buy it later.
Mm-hmm.
She
But it
has
doesn't-
key pieces though, Prada, that you can buy in the store,
Yeah.
and then if you love the print on that dress, then you get it in a t-shirt or a shirt, and that makes it more accessible.
They do sell some of the key pieces that they show. They just change it. I mean, most designers have a commercial collection that they do for sales, and then they have show pieces, and some people buy the show pieces. I mean, there are all these different ways of buying. There are different online stores, and
I mean,
I don't know, Moda Operandi, they do pre-orders from shows, so they maybe have created a whole new area where people are ordering specifically show pieces. I don't know actually, but
You can
I'm
buy
sure.
live, can't you, from Burberry, pretty much.
Wow.
Yeah,
And
they do. I'm
Like
sure,
almost
they
in
put
Topshop,
a few
yeah, like
pieces in
season
there.
too,
Yeah.
randomly.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like if you see a sheer piece on the runway, when you see it in the selling collection, it will have a lining, etc., that everything always changes. You go to a McQueen show and you see, 60 exits of the most beautiful work. You go and do a showroom appointment in Paris and there are 300 pieces in the selling collection. Quite a lot of things will be a little black dress with a motif on.
But does this get us back to the idea of what's the point of the show? Because Anna, you kind of said before the whole idea of a show seems quite outdated, and I know commercial collections have been around for a long time, it's nothing new, but it does get me thinking, if what we're seeing on the runway, as you mentioned McQueen, which is a really great example, is completely different to what's available for sale, why are we still showing as if 4 times a year? Why doesn't the show just become what it already is, which is a big exercise in branding that happens once a year and is absolutely beautiful and live streamed, and then
But that's what it is.
so why are we
but
still
the thing
doing it 4
because
times?
no one's
Why is
come
everyone
up
killing themselves?
no
to
one's
go
come
see
up
it?
with a better idea, and all of those people who also, to be honest, when you watch it on a screen, it's not the same as when you're sitting there and you hear the
Yeah,
music
that is
and you
really
see
true,
the
yeah.
clothes go past you. And
I thought
there's
that
nothing
yesterday
that
though,
can
but then I
replace
watched
that.
the Gucci stream and I could see more than when I've been to.
I don't
But
remember.
it's
Well,
not
there's
just the
some shows.
experience.
I
isn't
don't
it?
remember. I can sit with Alex Fury for hours and we'll discuss a shoe that was on the Dior runway in 2008. But I can't do that about shows I wasn't actually at.
Yeah,
I don't know
you
why.
do remember them in a different way. They just
the
kind
whole
of
visceral
imprint in
thing.
your
Do you
brain.
Are the
So
shows
like-
even for us anymore? I feel like the shows are for, like everyone live streams. The shows.
Oh, it drove me crazy in London. You know, trying to get from Templey to Unique, and they give you a 40-minute window, and you've got to be there because they're live streaming it. So it becomes about the consumer, not the journalists in the room. And the fact that and Burberry too, that everyone missed the Marcus Almeida show, all the senior editors,
Yeah, it was
because
empty.
they have to go to Burberry. Back to the advertiser thing, which I keep harping on about. And so all the people who would have loved to have seen the Marcus show missed it because you couldn't feasibly do both shows.
People are trying to
mentioned-
get their money's worth, basically.
Yeah.
If you're going to spend, like, I don't know how much Burberry spend on a show. You
Millions.
can't even, yeah. So
Yeah.
if they're going to spend millions and millions on a show, they're like, well, we need to, you know, incorporate some kind of branding into this and part of our marketing budget. And
I
you know,
wish
they're
they
just
wouldn't show
trying to
on
make it-
schedule, but then if you don't show on schedule, then no one's going to come to London.
Or
But I
have the
think,
shows
yeah.
closer together.
I think
Everything's so
the
spread apart.
organisation
That
in
is a real
London is
problem
just
in London.
quite bad.
Yeah.
It's better than it used to be.
Yeah, but it's
I'm
still
interested
mad.
because you mentioned the Topshop show before, and I have been thinking a lot about the point of the shows and the roles of journalists and whether actually show reports matter to what ends up in store, etc., and who has the real power. I just like thinking about stuff like this. But I was thinking about the Unique show and how, you know, they streamed it and people could sort of click on things they liked and like certain colours, and it was almost like they were asking their consumer to do their buy for them.
Yeah.
And I did start to think about how we're all becoming a bit obsolete. Like, does it actually matter if what journalists think of it? If you watch it anyway, you've already made your opinion. You know, if the show's been streamed and the consumer's sitting there watching it, do they care what someone goes and writes? So it got me wondering whether, just does it matter if people miss the Burberry
I
show?
think
Does it?
it's why, or I'm biased obviously, but why blogs are so successful
Yeah.
is that in a world of inordinate choice, people want the curated view. I know curated is a very overused word. So I think that even if everyone can order what they want from Topshop, they still want someone to tell them what's good and what's not. And I think that's why blogs are so successful.
So do you think blogs are going to be the kind of way forward in terms of communicating about fashion? Because
No, I just think that they're another way for people to get information in a very focused and edited way.
And from somebody that they trust as well,
Yes.
that they have a relationship with. I think that's the difference between blogs and kind of more traditional journalism, is that you're actually reading, you know, whoever you relate to, whoever you've got a personal relationship with, you know, even if it's just through what you've read.
You trust their
You
word.
it's the
trust
modern
their
version of
word,
a
yeah,
newspaper
completely.
column, isn't it? You
Yeah,
know that
yeah.
person, you feel like
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
speaking directly to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is why you would choose to read Alex in the Independent or Laura in the Times, because you think you trust their taste level.
Can we go back to Topshop though, because I think that's quite an interesting point. I do think that a kind of high street brand like that, it's really interesting how they show and why they show within the same schedule. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like what they're offering is something very different, you know. The price point is different, the accessibility is different, the wearability is different, to use a word that you don't like. But you know, it's kind of, they're going so far forward with their kind of technological advancements and the way that they're actually presenting that product. I kind of wonder if they're actually doing the right thing by showing on schedule. You know, it's a bit of a...
Would you rather just see them show digitally?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think so too.
But I think for them it's just a branding exercise.
Well,
they're
exactly, yeah.
supporting all the designers, they're spending a lot of money, they
It's-
want to have their presence.
it's their quid
Yeah.
pro quo
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
giving so many people such extraordinary support.
Even Topshop, you can't buy the clothes in store, those exact clothes,
Mm.
or
That's a
they're
good
still
point, yeah.
changed. And you'd think that Topshop, you should be able to buy that exact outfit in store.
But it speaks to the whole complicated nature around fashion you were saying, which is Topshop has supported New Gen, was it for 11 years now? All those people, you know, J.W. Anderson sold out collections, the amount of money they've poured into the coffers of young designers in the UK, I guess the argument is they can
But
have
they
their
also
moments in the
then
glory
rip
and
those
return.
designers off.
It's an eternal circle, isn't it?
Oh, we're starting, sorry.
It's not very spring-summer, is it?
We've said every single panel we've done, the first comment when the show starts is, it's not very spring-summer, isn't it?
It's
No, I think it's because we've all said that, you know, no one cares about seasons, which goes back to this big comment big debate about how we show and whether it makes any
well,
sense.
Northern
And also-
Hemisphere spring-summer.
Do you
I mean, the
think
force-
when everything gets delivered now. I think
Exactly,
even
yeah.
buyers are starting to understand that if this is going to deliver in February, it's not summer
Yeah.
for anyone. So
And also summer wear, you know, it's kind of
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
as
look
well,
how-
like the Prada woman, she's in the winter, she's got heating, and in the summer, she's got aircon. She doesn't need, she's wearing fur in the
good
summer.
point.
she's travelling all the time anyway.
But I mean, think her a year ago, her spring summer was monochrome, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So she's not exactly someone who's busting out the pastels.
It's kind of sporty.
I
which
thought
is
the
great.
rest was very wintry as well. You know, that palette was incredibly.
I mean,
autumnal.
that I would, if I didn't know, I would have said that was an autumn-winter look.
But also, I mean, doing 4 seasons just means that everything just blurs into one anyway. You know, it's
And
kind
yeah.
of the separation.
And if you're in
she
Brazil
probably
or
doesn't know what season it
Australia,
is. She's so busy. Poor thing.
I wonder if those are separate.
Or it's been
Oh.
together.
I mean, I've just been in Rio and I was wearing a woolly sweater in August, so
What's our take on what we've seen so far?
I wonder who the designer is. I mean, of the
The-
print, whether
yeah.
that's an
Can we
artist
find out who
or...
the artist is? Because someone will probably have tweeted about it or something.
I think, and these are the same, well, maybe not exactly the same, but everyone, again, on Instagram, everyone's been putting up all the invites.
Yeah, because it's the same one off the invite.
I mean, there's a bit of a kind of, I don't know, RAF reference there as well, I think, with that print on the dresses.
Be interesting to know how it deconstructs. Do those bikini tops come off, or are they integral
Yeah,
to the
that's
dress?
Yeah, yeah.
Because actually, without them, it's a great piece, isn't it? It's incredibly simple. Actually, really quite commercial, I think, isn't it? If you strip it down.
The socks or the whatever they are fantastic as well.
She did socks like that a few, like back in the day. I
She does
remember
love
when
a sock, doesn't
Yeah, but the way they're not
Socks is
socks, they're like
shoes.
there.
Kind of cut
That's
off,
cool.
yeah.
This does
That's
remind me
not-
though of what
that's
we
cool,
saw
actually.
what we saw for autumn winter, and that kind of dirty glamour, you know, that dirty opulence. Like, it's not too polished, it's not too clean, it's kind of
Well, I think
grungy.
That's that whole, like, everyone's feeling a bit more laid back. There's the flat shoes and a bit of a sense of humour and...
It's
Is
quite
it
a bad
MIA?
taste, isn't
Sasha?
it?
I think so, yeah. I was just wondering that, but I didn't want to say it because I got it wrong.
It's very Louise Gray, isn't it?
Yeah, I was thinking
Wow,
that
yeah.
that
Yeah,
looks
it's
like
like
incredibly
Louise
Louise
Gray,
Gray.
yeah.
It feels very current, doesn't it, with that nod to the kind of sportswear stuff. You know, this could, if you saw one look by itself, you could presume this was off a London.
It's quite
You could see
maximalist as
MIA
well,
wearing
isn't
this,
it?
I think.
Here, have another sequin.
Yeah.
And a really big one.
Yeah.
I love when she uses crystals. She's the best with crystals.
Martin, what's your take so far?
I think it's great that it's so embellished. It reminds me of the Marc J, because I do think it's about embellishment again. It's sportswear and it's pop culture, and I think when Miuccia does her take on pop culture, I think it's super interesting when it becomes more banal almost, you know, not so over-intellectualized. So I do get bored with that, you know, with the disheveled look.
But
I
do you
think
not
it's
find, I
interesting.
sometimes get a bit concerned when people do pop culture stuff, because it feels almost a bit...
Yeah, but I think she's incredibly knowledgeable. Like I think we, you know, like I think as William said earlier, like her references, it's so wide and
Well, let's pray we get the show back. There we go.
Well, that's why I was sort of saying, I mean, I know it's a bit cheeky, but, you know, Raf doing similar kind of painterly prints, you know, like things which are quite graphic. And when he does it, you know, it is very much about that. It's about his huge kind of knowledge base. And I guess with Miuccia it's the same, you know, she really knows what she's doing and she
Does
can
it feel
reference.
slightly patronising? You know, perhaps not with designers, but I often feel this when you get sort of higher brow magazines putting like only wears Essex stars in them. You know, I sometimes wonder if that kind of whole obsession fashion's got with kind of taking pop culture lowbrow references and putting them in a high fashion context, and we're not kind of a bit tired of that.
I don't think pop culture is low anymore.
No.
I think that's
Interesting.
I think that's not of this time anymore.
We live in a world where everything is warm, definitely.
Yeah, I don't believe in high versus low anymore. I do believe in expensive clothes with references to pop culture. I think that's incredibly interesting. Because, you know, it says something about luxury, it says something about, you know, dressing like your daughter. I don't know, there's something twisted and interesting about it.
And yeah, and price points have changed completely. If you think that you can pay more now for a Warhol than you can pay for an 18th century masterpiece, the world has turned upside down in its perceptions of value anyway, I think.
But I mean, that's been going on for a while anyway. I mean, Castelbajac is the king of doing that.
Yeah.
She's almost done like the crop tops that everyone's been wearing and the bras, but she's done
Because
it in
of
panels.
Yeah, it's a joke. But
Yeah.
it's really funny. It does feel very, like that skirt, you know, that's like that J.W. Anderson shape that we've seen everywhere. It feels very relevant what she's doing, but almost a twist on it, as you say, that bra top done on a sweater.
But also commercial, because look at those shoes, you can see some kind of Milanese princessy type who likes her luxy furry stuff, she'll ignore all of this, but she'll go and buy those shoes with the big blingy crystals on the toes.
To me, this is a very street style friendly collection though, you know, you can see everyone wearing that.
That's true.
I feel like it's a new kind of branding that we're seeing, you know, with the whole, like with the Christopher Kane Frankenstein t-shirts, it's that new, like it might as well say Christopher Kane, that might as well say Prada on it, you know, and it's no more interesting because it's got a face on it than if it's
I
Prada.
do think she always has that with spring-summer collections, and maybe not
For
like
sure.
last year, but like for spring-summer 11 it was, you know, the bananas, spring-summer 12 it was, you know, the little cars.
She does
Everything is much
very
more
bright,
considered
yeah.
and well put together in spring-summer.
I think that's also about the idea, you know, we were talking about how things diffuse onto the high street as well, and if you kind of have something which is iconic,
So
there is
iconic.
complete separation because, yeah, you know, one of the high street brands can do a t-shirt with cars on it, but they can't use the same cars.
But isn't
And
that
if
why
you know,
London's
then you
more
know.
interesting though? Because I feel like what we saw from Simone Rocha, what we saw from Medium Kirchhoff, all of our panels agreed that it could be emulated. You know, a kid could make that look in their bedroom, but they couldn't physically use the textures and the techniques that Simone had done. And I find that kind of interesting when designers are making something that cannot be copied. You know, it can be, whereas this, you know, it doesn't feel as exciting as when someone like Simone is making something that is just incredible texture.
Because that's the goal as a young designer. You need to do stuff that can't be copied.
Can't be copied.
As Prada, you can sue the shit out of anyone.
Yeah.
And Simone has been copied. Like her shoes
so
has been
much.
copied.
Everywhere, yeah.
Everywhere.
Did you find that very frustrating?
Very frustrating.
Yeah.
It's the worst thing ever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because these people have not even just the power to take people to court, but they've got the distribution. So it's like people, they can be everywhere. So everyone knows that Prada did it first and will see it in the shops and have the opportunity to buy them before you could buy, you know. Someone like Simone isn't going to be in every single store in the world. They don't have the distribution channels to get it out there. So it's like, it's equal. It's not just about having the lawyer power. It's that when you're a small designer, a big house can copy you even, and then their stuff is all over the place.
Well, that's one of the brilliant things about the internet, though, is people can call people up on that maybe in a way that they never could before. You see bloggers doing
But you know, it
that.
happens both ways, because do you remember J.W. Anderson copied that J. Crew? It was J. Crew, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
J.
A couple
Crew,
of
yeah.
seasons ago. So it isn't just the big houses that are ripping off.
And also on the flip, I mean, I saw Sean Sampson posted on Facebook the other day that he was actually quite proud that someone had copied his stuff.
Yeah,
You
some
know,
people
it's
like it.
Yeah, it's flattering. It's, you know.
It is flattering.
It'll be interesting to see though how it looks like
It's
this
more
distilled,
annoying.
because there aren't that many people who are going to be wanting to wear a bedazzled face on their frocks. So how will that distill down to the high street? What influences will people take from
I
this?
think it'll be those massive embellishments. You'll see them
And
everywhere.
the stripe
Yeah.
socks.
And the shoes.
And the colourful, like, I think it's croc leather it looks like. It was like the orange colourful.
What's your take on this,
Is
Abigail?
she playing Britney?
I'm liking the colourful furs. I always like what she does with furs.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing you always know you always know there's going to be fur in a Prada collection, and I'm a big fur lover. So I'm loving the coloured fur so far.
Can I just say it's the best soundtrack of the season so
Yeah, you were
far?
loving life over there. You were just like, is this Britney?
I think if Prada is doing Britney, then it's circles complete.
She always has really, really good soundtracks. Like the soundtracks are
That's-
amazing.
I love the cut, like how that's a really simple sweetheart dress, but then she's got the ribbed striped underneath. That
Yeah.
makes it different.
I feel like some of the stuff we've seen this season is kind of styled within the item, and I found that really exciting. You know, when like that dress looks like a styling trick, but in the clothes, we've seen that quite a lot this season. I found that really interesting.
The shoes are incredible as well. They really are.
I can imagine in real life the collection's even more amazing because it's got quite a lot of depth to it. It's
Well, and the
quite-
fabric's always amazing.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of that blue around. It seems to be a colour that I keep seeing again and again.
It's interesting that we talked about ugliness before, because this is an ugly collection, but it's beautiful for it.
It's the kind of thing my mother would look at and she would not be able to process it.
But I think if you saw that girl in the street, you'd be intrigued by her, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
She'd look a bit...
We
Might
definitely know it's Prada.
run screaming in the opposite
Yeah.
direction in reality.
But that's kind of what I love about Prada, because I was thinking for how great it would be to see my mum on the panel discussing a product.
You should have brought her with you.
I know, I was thinking about that. That would be so good.
Yeah, Alex took his mum to the shows on Sunday.
Really?
You should definitely do a
She
panel
did.
of mums.
We
That'd
should
be
do a
really
mum
good.
panel.
That would be
There we go,
really
Nick.
good.
That's a good idea. I'm getting a thumbs up.
I like a random neighbor. You know, just bring it to the panel.
We're doing a student panel this season, which will be nice. But yeah, we'll do a mum one next season.
Especially with Prada, I think that would be so
Especially with
incredible.
Can you imagine?
My mum
PR
was
would be
great.
like, what is Show Studio doing?
My mum would, yeah. I think my mum would actually wear some of this.
But
Yeah,
definitely
so
get a lot of
my
watches.
mum definitely not. My gran might.
This is, as much as we've got that kind of the sporty socks and stuff, it's a dressed up collection. You know, there is a primness to it. Someone said, you know, you can imagine Milanese princesses wearing little shoes, but there is a primness.
Who was it who mentioned trousers before, about collections don't have any trousers in? Was
Yeah,
you as
last
Maarten?
season, last
I
winter
don't
had
see
no
many
trousers.
trousers here.
No.
No, but this summer you can kind of get away with it. I think for winter to not offer a pair of trousers, not a single pair of trousers.
Or maybe it's fine, it's Prada, she can get away with it.
It's really quirky as well. Like every piece is really quirky.
It's like a rainbow.
But this goes back, we talked about this quite a lot as well on the Simone panel, but to me this is just like her being like, girls don't care about dressing for men, they don't care about looking sexy, because I think it's quite funny how sexy the shapes are, you know, like sweetheart necklines, like strapless dresses. But this is, you know, it's quirky, it's not sexy. Having a massive face on you is quite
yeah, but a sense of humor is the sexiest thing ever.
Yeah, I
but
don't
I
think
don't
I
think-
agree actually.
do you
I
think
think
it's
this is
sexy?
really sexy.
It does look a bit like a rainbow.
But I think
throughout.
that's because
I
you're
don't know, those
open-minded and
socks.
cool, but I think most boys would look at
I think a lot of boys
You
would
go,
be
William.
scared by this,
Yeah.
as they are by a lot of Prada.
Yeah, but I mean those socks, that is a sexy thing to do, you know, that's quite and I don't know.
The flashes of skin.
That kind of seclusion, and those heels as well, they're incredible.
I love that I can
And
imagine
Yeah.
little teen girls wearing their hockey socks now with their heels around.
That's
gonna
really
be-
cool.
Are they leg warmers?
Yeah, they're like a leg warmer. They stop sort of around I think they actually go under the heel.
It's quite prim at its heart, isn't it? Those princess coats and Peter Pan collars.
But doesn't this show the influence of London?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Like you see
Yeah.
Ashish, you see Meadham, you see
Yeah,
Louise.
it's true.
Bit like Needham met Louise.
I
via
think it's
Rainbow.
interesting with Prada that every season is so, like, you've no idea what she's going to do.
Oh, I was going to ask that. How do we know it's Prada though? Because every season is completely different, but you know
Because it's really
Prada.
expensive.
Yeah, but I feel like maybe it's something in the shape. You know, you could look at a still from this one look and know it's Prada. I think it's her palette.
It's ugly. Things that are ugly and
It's
ugly
quite
shoes.
brave. I mean, it's brave.
You could look at the shoes and you'd know it was her, because no one else in Milan is doing something like that, are they?
Yeah, but also the strength, and I think
The cohesion?
the strength of the woman as well, you know, like that woman has balls to wear that stuff, you know, she
That's
does.
brave.
Her use of crystals, I always know that it's her, because a lot of people do embellishment, but they don't do it how she does it. She almost does it like it's part of a painting. It's not used to be glitzy. I wouldn't look at her crystals and think that was blingy and glitzy.
Again, it's ugly, isn't it?
It's done in an unusual way.
And she doesn't care.
It's an amazing
Like she has
set.
this like I don't care attitude, no?
The sets are always so. I think in the last few seasons, especially, the sets have just been absolutely amazing.
It was interesting
Well,
watching
they
it
love it.
They
I
love
love
it.
when she comes
before the
out
live
wearing
stream when they were
stuff.
showing
Because
everybody
of Britney.
painting it as a set.
Yeah. So are we giving that a thumbs up then?
I am,
Yeah.
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 How would we summarise it if you had to go away and explain it to someone? What would you say?
Like a rainbow vomited with crystals. Via leg warmers.
Playful.
Japanese hockey player.
Yeah.
Crystals.
How would you
Kind of
cook hockey
sexy
player?
I'd
fetish
say-
Japanese hockey player. Yeah.
Louise found a job at Prada.
I need the socks, I know that. I
Yeah.
can't live without them.
When you look at a
basically.
show, is that how you approach it? Do you approach it in terms of what pieces am I going to take for styling, or do you approach it like shopping? How do you do it?
Yeah, I do. I approach it like, what am I going to wear and what am I going to use for my clients, and how is that going to work on the red carpet, and what can I use that piece for? How do I turn it into reality? And
When you work with your sort of styling clients as well, do you look at it and think, you know, that'll look good on this person?
yeah, straight away.
Who would you put this on?
This one's quite tricky, you know, because it's quite different. I mean, Rihanna would look amazing in this, but she looks amazing in anything. So
Put her in
that's
those
quite-
socks.
Yeah,
That'd be
that's
hot.
quite.
Everyone's like,
He's got Instagram
but,
visions of her in a little bikini in those socks.
I'm actually working with this new singer called Lord, who's only 16, who I think would look awesome in these pieces. And she normally dresses really dark and quite black.
She's amazing.
I think one
amazing,
thing that
isn't
Prada, it's interesting you mentioned that you can imagine it looking good on someone really young, because that was very girlish, but she always makes it look grown up, and I think maybe it's the shapes, you know, that overcoat, it feels quite prim, but that was quite poppy, you know, it was young. You mentioned Louise Gray, whose stuff, I think she managed to do that in a really clever way as well, Louise does, where it feels girlish and fun and young, but it always feels grown up and intelligent. Like, I think that's one of the skills of Prada, you never quite know how she achieves each effect, you know, you kind of want to go and...
I think sometimes it's quite important when you're young and you know what you want and you know what you want in life. You don't want to look like a young sort of sweet princess. You want to look like you know you're empowering and you know what you want in life, and that's why that's important. Because for Lord, as an example, I'm not going to put her in a suit because she's 16, but she wants to feel bossy in that way. So something like that's really good.
There's that evolutionary period as well, isn't there, from like kind of 14 through to 17, where you're really becoming who you want to be. You know, not necessarily who you actually are, but who you want to be. You know, and you're kind of selecting and curating what's around you.
What does this tell us about how women want to power dress? Because I feel like Prada is kind of a power dressing brand, but how do women want to look fierce now?
Power dressing, if you're talking about women who actually go to work in office, has changed so much. I got looking at a brochure that I arrived today from a label called The Fold. Their coat's about 600 quid, dresses about 400 pounds. I didn't see a single suit in it, and it's set up by women who had an MBA who wanted clothes to wear to the city. And I was thinking how much things have changed, that she can do a dress with a really interesting asymmetric peplum, and it is selling to corporate lawyers. It's just the way women look at their clothes for their actual work has changed.
I think the way women think of clothes to look strong as well has really changed. We
don't need that armour of a suit anymore.
Yeah.
I think this is like, I'm not afraid to really people notice me, you know. I think it's loud. All of those pieces are loud. You wear one of those dresses and people are going to see you. So, it's definitely saying something about that. I don't know if everyone wants to do that.
But I think it's interesting because when we look at Mary Catranzo in London, a comment that people often make is it's, clothes that smart women want to wear, it's clothes that women buy for themselves. And again, it's incredibly loud, it's incredibly colourful, and it just got me thinking about whether that's a new kind of, power dressing, to use that term for want of a better one, that women want to look a kind of an in-your-face type vibe. I don't know if any of you have noticed that, or if you feel that.
Speaking to a few buyers, it always really interests me that the things that do incredibly well in the Middle East, in Dubai, are Mary Catranzo, are Peter Pilotto. It's those, Louise Gray as well, actually. It's those kind of really quite out there statement pieces.
But do you think that's purely the colour, because it feels...
They buy full runway looks.
But I think that's
Singapore Fashion Week.
Isn't that more status?
4 girls wearing full Mary Kay runway looks. I didn't even think they put it into production. They're looking at a £7,000-8,000 dress, and they'd sell and sell and sell.
What's the
I was just saying, I think that's also just a statement. Like in the old days, you would buy a bag and it would have a big Chanel logo on it, and now people buy a runway look
because they're more informed,
and they're
and
saying
they understand.
and everyone's more informed. So people in the street know that that's a runway look, and they understand what it is to be what it is to have a runway look.
We threw a point out there that's actually really interesting. You said everyone's more informed, and I want to talk about how the way in which everyone being more informed has changed the way people shop, because you said they used to buy a bag, now they buy the runway look. Do we think people watching live streams and being more popularly aware of fashion, how has that changed shopping patterns?
Well, if you take America, say someone like Ikram in Chicago, who 15 years ago a shop like that would have sold very conservative clothes for the Midwest. Now she's someone who, obviously previously with the help of Michelle Obama, has broken new labels in the US. It's extraordinary. I think people's expectations of what fashion is so different.
I think also shows used to be just for the industry, so actually the only people who knew what the trends were going to be were the models who were being shot with those looks on. So they were always, really kind of before everyone else, wearing all these, interesting things that no one else had seen. And now the consumer is seeing what's coming out in the shop 6 months in advance. I think also that's probably why, for example, Prada isn't going to do exactly what they've done on the runway, because 6 months later, people have seen it. A lot of people are bored and have moved on. I think and in that sense, it's kind of an interesting idea that people are streaming everything and they want consumers to see it, because you can't buy it. So if you show all of your customers what you're putting on the runway and it's not out in the stores, unless you're doing something like pre-order or something that means they can actually get hold of it, you can be doing yourself a disservice, because by the time it comes out, people don't want it anymore.
How much changing they do based on the feedback they get. I always think about that. I don't know.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah, whether people look to popular reactions, whether they look at what look was Instagram the most, what look was most heavily ripped off, and then they shape. I always wonder about that. I've never actually read a really informative piece about that.
Didn't BOF run something, a link to something this week about how designers are using Instagram as market research.
Yeah, there's a really good new startup, and I can't remember the name now, which is really going to annoy me, which is doing that. It's not just kind of curating Instagram to give it to brands for marketing material. I was showing it to Nick actually. They're taking all of Instagram and giving feedback back to the brands based on how many direct units sold based on Instagrams of certain products. I'll find the name.
That's really interesting.
It's really interesting, yeah.
It could be dangerous to do that 6 months. I mean, I think one of the buyers that we work with actually was telling me about this. It's like a program on Instagram where you can actually link a product straight to their website, their store website, and literally click on Instagram and buy the product that they Instagrammed, something like that. It's like a new thing someone's developed in America.
Instagram's changed everything. It really
But if you
has.
think, it's Steve Jobs, wasn't it, who said you shouldn't produce product by panel, you should always have someone with their vision. And I guess the danger you have is that if people are paying too much attention to Instagram and Twitter, that their vision ends up being diluted by the
Super
customer.
dangerous.
Well, also you
Super
can't
dangerous.
see what a product is from a picture, and also sometimes something will look better in a picture
Well, we've
than it
talked
does
a
in
lot
real
about
life.
the Instagram effect and how that's changed fashion, how that's changed design, and especially on our Christopher Kane panel when he did those sweaters. And we talked a lot, exactly as you say, you can't see proper design. I think that's, to me, Instagram has really fueled like a kind of street style friendly fashion, because you can't see a beautifully cut jacket, you can't see a beautifully cut pair of trousers, you just see a statement sweater or bright colour, and it's fueled, like brands like Kenzo obviously do brilliantly off that.
Pinterest as well.
Yeah.
I was one of the London Fashion Week boards for Pinterest, and I can predict which pins will be repinned. I can do a close-up of some sort of couture level work on a template dress. I know that'll get hundreds of repins. I put a Mead & Kirchhoff dress up, it hasn't been repinned once. So yeah, I think it's a dangerous route to go down, because I do think that mass opinion is very, very predictable.
Do you think it stops people being visionary as well, because it means everyone's trying to play it safe, trying to please everyone? It's just, I think you kind of insinuated that, Anna, in what you said, no one wants to be focused because they're trying to take too many opinions. Do you think we have that a bit too much in fashion at the moment, where everyone's trying to, will this work online, will this work in store, will this work for this audience, will this work for that, and everything gets a bit confused? And maybe that's going back to some of the brands you were talking about, Maarten and Sasha, how you said that Stockholm Fashion Week was boring. Maybe people are playing it too safe, and everyone's kind of stunned into silence.
I don't know that everyone's playing it too safe. I was saying more about, I mean, if they're streaming things when they're showing them to buyers and journalists, that by the time they actually come out in the stores, people will have seen it so much that they're almost bored.
I think that's a really key point, actually, because I think that, I mean, especially with how fast everything is, with there being, so much out there, ultimately what you see on the runway, and everyone has seen it, you've kind of replicated without buying the items. So by the time they're actually in the store, it's sort of over.
Also, I really felt that with that Prada, the flowers. By the time I actually saw people wearing it, you were like, oh God, aren't we bored of that yet? And it probably just come out.
And like from a stylist point of view, you've already pulled it, used it, shot it, a celebrity's worn it, and then you see it in the store, and it's quite refreshing to see it differently.
I'm curious to know, your clients, do they ask for runway stuff? Are they informed, or are you
They are on
telling
Instagram and seeing it before me. It's crazy. I'm getting WhatsApp. This fashion week, I've noticed, I was like, whoa, guys, chill out. Like, I haven't even seen the show yet, and they're Instagramming me images of looks they want.
Wow.
WhatsApping me the Instagram image. That is how quick.
And is that music
Amazing.
artists, or is that
that's
music artists? Okay.
That's what I mean.
really
I don't feel like that's
Yeah.
helpful for actually from a brand's perspective. You don't really want a celebrity to wear your stuff until it's in the stores, because then you get so much press for it. People have seen like all these celebrities wear it. It's been in every magazine, it's been in every newspaper, and then by the time it comes out, people don't want to see it.
The celebrity doesn't wear it once it's in store. They don't want it because everyone else
But
is
it's
wearing
why
it.
I don't run reviews, and I don't do clothes on my site until people can buy them, because it's of no use to the designer, and it's no use to me, because I make money from affiliate links, to run clothes that people can't buy. I just find readers get incredibly frustrated if you put a dress up and say, isn't this amazing? They're like, well, I can't buy it, so what's the use?
We're the same. We wouldn't put anything on the site that you can't buy,
We don't even show, for our hats and headbands and accessories that we're doing, we don't show them a season ahead. We've been producing them, and they go in store in Browns 2 days after they're ready, and we launch them at Fashion Week, and that's it. You can buy it. It's done.
Why aren't brands doing
you know
that?
what Tamara Mellon is? Her new line.
Yeah.
She's not going to show any Fashion Weeks. She's going to put them in
And that
store
got a
and
huge
promote
amount
them.
of press, that decision. Everyone kind of applauded it, but
Click to buy. It's
Well,
beautiful.
it's like when Tom Ford's I think you remember the first show that he came back with. He didn't let anyone have any pictures. There were no photographers allowed, and
isn't that just
it was
because
kind
he's
of
like a control freak?
Maybe that as well, for sure. But it was definitely like a big discussion at the time that it was. I mean, I thought it was a really clever thing to do, because really by the time things come out, once everyone's seen those pictures, I mean, everyone's Instagramming things when we do our presentation, but I don't put any pictures up really, more than one picture up myself on, from our team. We don't do it because I don't want people to. Also, there are the big brands and the high street that can just do it in a minute.
So is fashion too democratic then?
Yeah, way too democratic.
I don't think, but I think democratic is like the wrong words, because I think.
Is it too popular?
Yeah.
I think there's two markets. I think there's one which is the market, which is people who do regularly buy and can afford to buy, but those people are not necessarily going to buy those kind of propositional pieces. And then there's another market where people want less, are willing to pay more, and want something kind of incredible.
We need the Mrs. Pradas to push our taste forward. I found it very depressing when someone told me that Bill Gatton's collections for Dior was some of the most commercially successful the house has had, when they weren't necessarily
That was the most successful
interesting
period for Dior, yeah.
And so I think we need the Pradas of this world to kind of keep pushing us, keep exploring what good and bad taste is, what's ugly, what's not, because otherwise we'll be in a world of pink temple-y with people repinning endless sequin pictures.
And that wasn't democratic. That Prada show was not democratic.
That was lofty, I felt.
Yeah, that was her vision, as it always is, but
So we're saying we like to see shows like that streamed because it kind of pushes everyone's taste level forward, but we'd happily not see Burberry live streamed.
But I mean, I think because it's been.
I absolutely agree.
Amen.
Also, if you're gonna live stream a show, then do a good one.
Yeah, live stream as if it's like something worth watching.
But you'll probably see in the high street in a month's time, or 2 months, or 6 weeks, you're going to see things that she's just done on them. That's the point, is that people are going to try and emulate that from now, and the high street can do that in a month.
But maybe that goes back. Maybe we've done a full circle back to the points we were making. Maybe that's why it's so ridiculously expensive, because she's trying to distance herself with that. She's kind of almost probably saying, well, let them try and it'll look absolutely horrible, because try and put a face on a sweater or a skirt without it looking disgusting, and then she'll do it and it's beautiful. Like, copies of those fairy flowers were horrible.
Also, if people are just gonna buy the shoes and the bags, then all the promotion that the high street's going to do in the next couple of months before she brings out her collection, it's just only going to help, probably.
Also going
Actually,
back,
that's really interesting. That is really, really interesting. It gets people involved in the
and then
aesthetic
she'll come
for that
out with the
season.
amazing version of the shoes and the bags. I don't think high street can really do shoes and accessories in the same way. Maybe they can do a t-shirt or a skirt or a knit dress or something, but to do accessories really in a really well-made way, they need to be luxury and they need to be really well made, and they cost a lot of money. So she's getting the high street to do the promotion kind of preamble, and then she'll come out with the accessories and people will buy them. Maybe.
William, you were going to say something?
I was just going to say, regarding Tom Ford as well, maybe that's almost was part of his kind of thought process about restricting who kind of could take photographs and who could get in, was because obviously, well, not obviously, but I guess what he's doing is a bit more accessible in the sense that the high street can kind of do a take on that in the same way that they probably couldn't do a take on that successfully.
Yeah, no, sure, that's what I mean. He was like the first person to say, I don't want anyone to take photos, because if they do, someone's going to copy it. So he didn't release any photos, not even to the press. It was just, there was one photographer there, and all the buyers, and he wasn't allowed to, and it was like the lookbook or something that he used the pictures for.
To take it back to this collection, we're impressed though. I feel like it sparked a lot of interesting debate. My mind's kind of a bit boggling now. I need to go and sit down and work out what's going on with fashion.
I need a cake.
Do you want one?
No.
Isn't it the original
camera.
point that you watch a show, you watch it with a critical eye, that you can look at a show and you may not like it, but you can appreciate why it's good.
But isn't that what's so interesting about fashion at the moment, that we've appreciated why this is good both aesthetically, but it's also made our mind boggle in terms of business and the way fashion is shown, and we got that directly from the clothes. We looked at those prints and thought about what that means about the business of fashion and the way fashion is sold and the way fashion is copied, and I think Prada's one of the only designers that poses so many questions and makes you think that much.
I think also once we find out what what the artwork was and what she was actually thinking about.
But she'll say she was thinking about something else when she was like, this wasn't Japanese after that show. That was amazing.
But it will create a completely new discussion again, and she'll say something that no one predicted at all.
We'll have to all come back tomorrow and do a second panel. Well, I think we should call it a day and have some cake and tea and all calm down, because that was an amazing discussion. I do really feel like I don't quite know what I think about anything now. So thank you so much, guys.